let's talk about why it's not so easy always to sort through what is true and what is not true. Have you found that to be true in your life, that it's not always easy to figure out what's true, what's not true? Let me give you some examples of maybe some modern day myths. You might know some of them, you might not know others. Let's see, let's do a little quiz, all right? So these are modern day myths. How about this one? Have you heard we only use 10% of our brains? How many people have ever heard that? We only use 10%, it's not true. It's just a myth. Just 5, yeah. Some people only. Boy, you guys are feisty today. All right. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this one, but I'm just stating the details here. Sugar makes kids hyperactive. Not true. It's just a myth. I know you're like, no, it absolutely does. It has nothing to do with the gifts and all their friends running around, and it's just all this sugar, right? Well, anyway, you can look it up yourself, but it's no conclusive evidence scientifically that sugar makes kids hyperactive. How about this one? Chewing gum stays in your stomach for 7 years. I still have chewing gum in my stomach, but no, that's a myth. It goes away in about 3 or 4 days. But cracking your knuckles causes arthritis. It's true. We're gonna be in a fight today. It's gonna be like just fighting all day. Going outside with wet hair causes colds. No, viruses cause colds. But to this day, my 82-year-old dad will argue with me. If you do not wear socks with tile floors, you're going to get a cold. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. It's true. How about this one? Humans swallow 8 spiders per year in their sleep. That's true. If you say so, but it's a myth. So, listen, if anybody falls asleep today, we're just going to have this little spider coming down just for you. Wow. How about this one? Bats are blind. No, they can see perfectly fine. They just rather use their radar. Isn't that incredible that any kind of animal has radar? I mean, when you think about that, it's really strange. Imagine if we had radar. We'd just all be screaming as we're running into each other. Yeah, but no, they can see. Look it up. I'm telling you. Here's a question a lot of people ask. If God wanted people to understand the Bible, why did he make it so difficult to understand? I heard that. Scott said because they're only using 10% of their brain. And they might be blind and, as well, but we got to stop. Come on, guys. Trying to get through this. One of the reasons it's so hard to get the message of Jesus to people is because of all the baggage that keep cluttering up our brains to begin with. We've accumulated a lot of ideas about how the world works, what is true, what is not true. Sometimes we're being conned. Sometimes people just innocently get things wrong. That happens all the time. Sometimes we don't want to hear the truth because we just don't like it. It goes against our worldview or what we think is right or good. So we press into our myths in order to live in a world that makes sense to us. But there comes a time when the truth collides with our superstitions and our mythologies. And so we have to make a decision. What will we believe in? Today we're going to learn about a time when Paul and Barnabas take the message of Jesus to a place where people have very different ideas. And so as we read the scripture today, I want you to think about this question. How can I bring the truth of Jesus into the myths and superstitions of the world I live in? How can we do that? So we're continuing in the book of Acts, moving along, though, quite a ways. Acts chapter 14, verses 8 through 20, a good chunk of scripture. Let's read this together, but open your minds and remember this question, put it in the back of your head. How can we bring the truth of Jesus into a world full of superstition and mythologies? Verses 8 through 20. While they were at Lystra, Paul and Barnabas came upon a man with crippled feet. He had been that way from birth, so he had never walked. He was sitting and listening as Paul preached. Looking straight at him, Paul realized he had faith to be healed. So Paul called to him in a loud voice, "Stand up!" And the man jumped to his feet and started walking. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in their local dialect, "These men are gods in human form." They decided that Barnabas was the Greek god Zeus and that Paul was Hermes, since he was the chief speaker. Now the temple of Zeus was located just outside the town. So the priest of the temple and the crowd brought bulls and wreaths of flowers to the town gates, and they prepared to offer sacrifices to the apostles. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard what was happening, they tore their clothing in dismay and ran out among the people shouting, "Friends, why are you doing this? We are merely human beings just like you. We have come to bring you the good news that you should turn from these worthless things and turn to the living God who made heaven and earth, the sea, and everything in them. In the past, he permitted all the nations to go their own ways, but he never left them without evidence of himself and his goodness. For instance, he sends you rain and good crops and gives you food and joyful hearts." But even with these words, Paul and Barnabas could scarcely restrain the people from sacrificing to them. Then some Jews arrived from Antioch and Iconium and won the crowds to their side. They stoned Paul and dragged him out of town, thinking he was dead. But as the believers gathered around him, he got up, went back into the town. The next day he left with Barnabas for Derbe. Quite an event. Amazing things. You can't say the Bible isn't exciting. There's all kinds of interesting things in it. The Apostle Paul gets attacked by an angry mob, knocked unconscious by people throwing stones at him, dragged outside of the town and left for dead. And then he gets up, goes back into the town, and leaves for a 60-mile walk to Derbe the next morning. Whenever I don't feel like doing something, I just think about how tough Paul was. Incredible. Now, we've jumped ahead away from where we've been in the book of Acts with Peter and the other apostles in the land of Israel. Now we're following Paul and Barnabas for a bit. It's about 14 or 15 years after the death and resurrection of Jesus, just to give you a timestamp and a place. The message of Jesus is spreading all throughout the Roman Empire to ancient Greek and Roman colonies. Once again, God does this amazing miracle. This keeps happening. This man who had never walked before because his feet were deformed, he's listening to Paul preach. And all Paul had to do was look at him and say, "Stand up." And the man was instantly healed. So I want to show you a pattern that we see in the Gospels. We see it with Jesus, and we see it a few times in the book of Acts. We saw it with Peter. Now we're going to see it with Paul and Barnabas. And it's this pattern that keeps happening over and over. It starts with a miracle or miracles, okay? This is where God demonstrates his power. He does something unbelievable. So then naturally, there's amazement and belief. People respond to it. Go ahead, bring up that next slide there, Jen. They're amazed, and they respond with curiosity and faith. They move toward belief in God. But then God presents them, or they're presented with a choice. It's a decision point. Will you worship the true God? Now, at this point, you may have even experienced this in your own life. There comes opposition. There are enemy forces that push back. But then there's a rescue. God delivers and he vindicates his servants. And then finally, what you'll see is advancement. The gospel spreads even further. And this happens, inviting other people to join this movement, to join this family, this kingdom of God. That's exactly what happens here in Lystra. There's an ancient legend, okay? And this is real important to understand the background. The ancient legend was that the supreme god Zeus, or that's the Greek god, if you want to say the Roman god, it was Jupiter, okay? But the Greek supreme god Zeus and his son Hermes, they visited this region of Phrygia where this town Lystra is located. The legend says that Zeus and Hermes came in the form of ordinary men, and what they did is they visited over 1,000 homes, but they were rejected and not shown any hospitality, all except for this one elderly couple called Philemon and Baucis. And they welcomed Zeus and Hermes in their human form. They welcomed them even though they were poor peasants, and they fed them and they took care of them. So later on, they were rewarded by the gods. Philemon and Baucis rewarded, but everyone else's houses were destroyed by floods. So that's the legend, that's the myth that everyone in Lystra knew. Paul and Barnabas are there in Lystra. Lystra here is almost an entirely non-Jewish city. We would call it Gentile, non-Jewish city. They don't know anything about the Old Testament. They don't know anything about Abraham or Isaac or Jacob. They certainly don't know anything about this man named Jesus. How do you talk to people about Jesus who know nothing about the Bible or nothing about the God of the Bible? A long time ago, I met this engaged couple. They were from Japan, and they were here in the States for a few months for work. And the woman began attending a Bible study, and she wanted to explain Christianity to her fiance. She asked me if I would explain Christianity to her fiance. So we all went out to lunch one day, and I began explaining. Now, before this, he had never heard of Jesus. He had never heard of a Bible, never met a Christian. And so I started explaining, and I got to tell you, I had a really hard time. It's where do you start? It's such a difficult conversation. And so he's listening to me, and I'm trying to explain, and he keeps nodding his head, but I don't think he understood what I was saying, because I don't think I understood what I was saying. So it was very difficult. But Paul gives us a great example of how to start a conversation with somebody who really doesn't know anything about Jesus or the Bible. Paul starts with creation. See, for quite a long time now, scientists have been trying to show that life is common in the universe. It's everywhere. It's ordinary. And this is why every time there's the possibility of life on some distant planet in some distant galaxy, all the scientists get all excited. They're so desperate to prove that life is everywhere and common in the universe. There's nothing special about this tiny speck called Earth. But even if there was life somewhere else, I don't think it would make a difference. We would still say, well, that's just a gift from God. The real question is, where did all this come from? How do we know that our universe isn't just a tiny speck, that this tiny speck called Earth is in? To God, He's bigger than all of it. And so this is a gift from God, Paul is telling us. He starts with creation. Now, common thought back then was, this is how it all works. There are many gods. And you pray to these gods. You pray to whichever God could help you with whatever problem or needs or desires that you have. So those gods really didn't like humans. They kind of thought of humans as a nuisance. They were much more inclined to make humans their slaves than anything. So the people would pray and try to appease the gods to get what they needed from them. So I'm going to give you some examples of gods, both Greek and Roman, okay, of who people prayed to for various things. I'll start with Poseidon. Most of us have heard of Poseidon or the Roman god Neptune. Same thing. What did you pray to him for? Well, if you needed protection during sea travel, makes sense, right? He's the god of the sea. You got to think trade is happening. Most cities were located on the port. You really wanted to make that god happy because you've got a lot of commerce happening. All right, the next god, Aphrodite, or the Roman Venus. She's the goddess of love, of relationships, of romance. And then you have Demeter, or the Roman Ceres. He's the god of harvest, agriculture, fertility. That's who you pray to have good farming and all of that. Then you have Apollo. He's the god of healing, health, protection from illness, which is very important in those days. If you got sick, all kinds of bad things could happen. So you prayed to Apollo to make sure you didn't get sick. And then you had Hermes, which we just heard about, or Mercury. And he's the god of travelers and safe journeys. So before you go on a journey, you got to go somewhere, you need protection, you pray to Hermes. And then there's Hera, or Juno. That's the god of marriage, family stability, or childbirth. Then Athena, most of us have heard of Athena or Minerva. She's the goddess of wisdom, of education, of knowledge. Hephaestus, or Vulcan, didn't know that Star Trek was involved, but Vulcan is the god of craftsmanship, artisans, and workers. And then you have Artemis, or the god Diana. She's the goddess of animals, nature, hunting. And then you have Hestia, or Vesta, the goddess of home, family life, domestic peace. So if you want a peaceful household, you prayed to that goddess. So you see, there was someone to pray to for just about everything. And that's the way it was in the pagan world. So then when Paul and Barnabas show up to this place and they say something very odd to them, this is totally foreign to them. They say, there's only one God. What do you mean, one God? That's so strange. There are many gods. There's a whole pantheon of gods. Why would anybody believe in just one God? That's what they believed. And Paul and Barnabas preach and they say, no, there's just one God and he made everything. He made the heaven and the earth. That's the way. They didn't have the word universe back then. So the way they said everything was the heavens and the earth. He's the God of heaven and the earth and the sea and everything that's in them. He's the God of the cosmos. He's the God of everything. One God. Now we today live in a multicultural, spiritually diverse world. On Mother's Day this year, our family Joanna wanted to cross the Brooklyn Bridge. So we all went. It was a beautiful day, perfect weather day to walk across the Brooklyn Bridge. It took us about 30 minutes to go one way. It was wonderful. But there are all kinds of people in New York City. Most of us know that, right? So many different cultures jammed into one place. We even found Spider-Man there. Take a look. See? He was very friendly. Welcomed us to the neighborhood. So, yeah. Roman technology, conquest, they were brutal. Romans were brutal, but they did expand and they set up commerce all over the known world, trade. And this allowed Paul and Barnabas to travel freely and to go to all of these different places where they had all these different beliefs. Today, and for a while now, the internet connects people all over the world. We have satellites, phones, technology. It's all amazing. You can do business all over the world in any language. In fact, artificial intelligence now will translate in real time. You could talk to someone, a different culture from a different part of the world, speak English, and they would understand you perfectly. Imagine if Paul and Barnabas had this kind of technology. What would they do to get the message of Jesus all over the world? But then as they're there, things go sideways. Instead of this amazing miracle leading people to God, they all think Barnabas and Paul are Zeus and Hermes. And the people know the legend. You had better treat them right this time. Otherwise, bad things could happen to you. So out comes the priest of the temple of Zeus, and he says, get the fire going, we're having a barbecue. It's going to be a great celebration because the gods have visited us. The human tendency is to worship almost anything except God. If we can understand this simple truth, this truth about ourselves and our tendency, we could avoid so many problems. We are plagued by superstitious thinking. It's so easy for us to be swayed. And we'd all like to think, no, not me. I can spot the frauds. I won't be fooled. I can tell when something's true or when something's not. But here's where we fail. We all bring our own myths and legends. We're all influenced by the culture that shaped us, the language and the dialect that we speak. So at this point, this other group, they show up in the story that Luke is writing here. They are the religious leaders. They have followed Paul and Barnabas all the way from Antioch, a long ways away. They're following them. They don't like their message that Jesus is the Messiah, and they're on a mission to make sure that Paul and Barnabas cannot share this message. There's the opposition. So how do you go from people willing to worship Barnabas and Paul as gods to suddenly trying to murder them? I say watch out for crowds that can easily turn into mobs. Same thing happened to Jesus, and I think Luke wants us to see that. How did he go from being worshiped on Palm Sunday to the crowd yelling, "Crucify him," a few days later? Do you see the pattern? There's always someone inciting. There's always someone instigating, tapping into your fears and your disappointments. There's always someone saying, your life should be better, and the reason it's not is because of those guys over there. This is the work of the enemy. It's the work of Satan. It's to stop the message of truth of Jesus from coming to you. It's to stop it from going all over the world. The message of Jesus challenges the myths and the legends that we've been told all our lives. See, the world says you should worship Zeus. Zeus is the god of power. It's your life. You should be able to live the way you want to. You have the power. The world says worship Aphrodite. That's the god of sex. In other words, pleasure is the ultimate drug. If it feels good, it must be right. The world says you should worship Plutus, who's the god of wealth. You'll have security. You'll have independence if you have enough money. Those are the gods of the world. It all sounds so natural to our native dialect. This is the language that we speak so easily because it's all around us. It's wired into us from the youngest age. This is what's important. Worship these gods. Put your trust in these myths and these legends. And we think, no. I know myself. I would follow the truth. I can see clearly. What we should do is look at ourselves as honestly as possible and say, if I had more power, what would I do with it? If I could control more things, what would I control? If I had more money, what would I do with it? How would I spend it if more money came my way? If I had more time, what would I do with that time? What do I choose? Most people choose according to their circumstances. Life changes for them like the weather changes. Something happens in their life, an opportunity comes, they think, it must be God. This is so good. But how do you know it's God? What if it's the devil? The devil's always tempting people with good things, things that seem to be good. Did it come from God or did it come from the devil? Oh, it seems so right. I can feel it, people say. I can feel it. And then sometime in the future, they say, I don't know what happened. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was following Jesus. I don't know how we got here. Here's what happened. We weren't living by faith. We were living by chance, by feeling, by superstition, by myth. See, faith is so much more solid than how I feel on any given day. Faith is based on decision, not what I think about my circumstances. Faith says when I get knocked down, even knocked unconscious, I get up and keep following Jesus. Most people would probably say, okay, I got stoned, I got knocked unconscious, I think I'm done with this. I must be doing the wrong thing. You see, I didn't get a good result. No, faith says I'm going to keep going. This is not wrong. This is the way it is. Did you notice who came around Paul when he got knocked unconscious? It was other believers. Paul and Barnabas were sent by the church. They were loved by the church. They were supported by the church. They were prayed for, even protected by the church. Just more evidence that we need to be there for each other. That's what the church is about. We need to show up, just like we support missionaries and people all over the world. It's people who need us to support them when they get knocked down, even get knocked out. We need each other when we get knocked down, when we get knocked out. We need to be aware of those who are getting persecuted, those who are being pushed over especially because they're sharing the message of Christ. So here's my concern for us here and really even our neighbors and friends in our community. Here's my concern. We live in a highly superstitious culture. Highly superstitious. People have picked up or even created mythologies to help them make it through life. It's an easy way to make sense of the world because many times the world doesn't seem like it makes sense. It's a way to deal with our fears. It's a way to deal with getting what I want. So for many people, Jesus might as well be Zeus. He's just another God you pray to make sure that you're going to be okay. My concern is people may have fooled themselves into thinking they know the one true living God when they're really just following their own mythology. So the real question to ask, and I would ask this, I have to ask this for myself, I would encourage you to ask it for yourself, but then as you engage people, maybe ask them, are you walking with Jesus? It's one thing to say, I'm a Christian. It's one thing to say, I believe in God. But it's a much different thing to say, are you walking with him? Are you walking with Jesus? Paul barely even got to talk about Jesus. If you notice, his sermon there, his brief little sermon, didn't even mention Jesus. He didn't even have a chance. And even with this miracle, this guy walking around that everybody knew he could never walk, even that didn't get them to accept the message of Jesus. Isn't that amazing? You would think for sure they would get it by now. So then why would God send Paul and Barnabas to Lystra if they were just going to get beaten up and sent packing? Why would he do that? So this wasn't the only time that Paul went to Lystra. He actually went back. And when he went back, this time he met a young believer named Timothy. Timothy was half Jewish, half Greek. His father was Greek, his mother was Jewish. Something got started in Lystra. Look what Paul thinks about Timothy. He wrote this in other places. He said that Timothy was my true son in the faith, my beloved and faithful child in the Lord, Paul writes in 1 Corinthians. Like a son with his father, he has served with me in preaching the good news, he writes in Philippians. This happened because Paul and Barnabas went to Lystra. So through the struggle, through the resistance, the conflict, the danger, the pain, even the persecution, the almost dying, God was at work. He was setting up an outpost for the kingdom in a strange place with people who believe strange things. God was doing what he needed to do, even though it didn't look like it. We don't always know what God is doing when the kingdom of God collides with the kingdom of this world. It doesn't always look like we're making progress. But when you teach your children to live for God, you're stepping into that darkness. You're colliding with the kingdom of this world. When you live out your faith in Christ at your workplace, you're confronting the gods of this world, the idols and the gods that people put their trust in. When you help someone who can't get up, even another believer, someone who's been knocked down, you're opening up a path for faith. When you tell people they're worshiping the wrong things, you might get beat up for that, but you don't know who might be watching, who might be listening, who might be secretly believing, even though the crowd has turned against you. So what about you? Have you been living somewhere in between the mythological gods of this world and the one true living God? What are some of the myths that people easily pick up? How about this? When we say, I'm running out of time. Have you ever thought that? It's a myth. God is eternal. You're not running out of time. God knows exactly what he's doing, and he's put you on this earth for a purpose, and he's given you just the right amount of time. God is eternal. Why would he have a problem with time? We're not running out of time. How about this myth? I need more money. God supplies our needs. We're the most prosperous people in all of history. And we say, I need more money. What's going on? Something's going on. God supplies our needs. Do you say, I'm so tired. I'm so worn out. Well, God is our strength. That's a myth. God is our strength. My body's broken. God is our healer. God heals. I need companionship. I'm lonely. God is our friend. He's our comforter. Don't buy into the myths of this world. Don't put your trust in the gods of this world. God is my everything. Jesus is what I need. Here's one. I need more faith. Now we're talking. Now we're getting somewhere. I need more faith. God will give us what we need to do his will. Are you questioning God? Are you saying, why, God? Why haven't you satisfied or supplied my needs? Don't treat Jesus like Zeus. Don't treat him like Hermes. Don't go to him and say, God, you're not big enough. You're not strong enough. Don't believe the lies and the myths. If God has something for you to do, he will give you what you need to do it. So then we should say, I need more faith. See, the reason why we don't do his will is because we haven't decided to. The reason we haven't decided is because we don't fully trust him. We say, I got to hold some back, God. I'm not sure you're going to come through with me. This looks risky. We need more faith. I need more faith. That's what we should be thinking. That's what we should be praying. That's how we should be acting. God has given me something to do. Does God fail? Does God shortchange you? Does he mistreat you? Is he unfair? Is he not good? Is he out to get you? We need more faith. Trust God. If you have a purpose for your life, if there's something for you to do, then the first place to start is, God, give me more faith. Maybe we're not doing what he's called us to do, and he's trying to get us to see that. Maybe the conflict isn't an accident, and maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe the trouble coming isn't there to crush us, but it's to make us turn to him and say, okay, God, you promised me you will be my supply. I trust in you. Give me faith. Give me the courage to take the risk. Give me what it takes to do what you have me to do. Let's have the musicians come up. We're going to spend just a little more time in worship. If that's your heart's desire, is to say, God, I'm open to you. I need more faith. Give me faith. Then I would encourage you to take this time right here, this time, to instead of an altar and a sacrifice being presented to Zeus, why don't we have an altar and a sacrifice given to Jesus? And that, as Paul would say in another place, our sacrifice is us, a living sacrifice put on the altar, given to God. So let's do that. Would you stand with me? We're going to sing a little bit more.